If you're a young Gen Z man or any young man in today's world trying to make sense of women and what is going on with the dating market and the dating dynamics of today's world, one of the last things that you ever want to do, and one of the easiest mistakes to make that us older guys have also made, is to make a woman the primary focus and your primary goal in life, and to be investing all of your energy, resources, and time into chasing a woman. This is a terrible idea for many, many reasons that I will get into. But first, let's talk about why I made this mistake and why so many other men, young and old, have made this mistake and are continuing to make this mistake. Why are they behaving this way? Why have they been duped into acting this way? And it comes down to our popular culture, which is the easiest way to change men's thinking through psyops and through agendas and certain narratives that are put into place by very intelligent, very highly paid psychologists that are recruited for making these Hollywood and Disney movies and countless books as well, that the young people are absorbing en masse, and this is the end result that you get. So what am I getting at here? If you look at any Hollywood or Disney movie in the past 20 or even 30 years, you'll see the very common theme of men going to great lengths and making tremendous sacrifices, going through great anguish to win over a woman and to chase a woman, to convince her to marry him, to convince her to give him her heart, and all of that romantic BS. So of course you've had many guys in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and now the Gen Z generation. You've had all these men that make this terrible mistake of chasing down women and begging for them and wasting exorbitant resources, time, and money to convince them and beg and be a monkey, dancing like a monkey with the cymbals, just doing anything they can to get a woman, because a woman must be the most important thing in life. Now, not only does this not work like it does in the movies, but it's actually one of the best ways to make a woman lose respect for you and even despise you. The last thing that any woman wants to hear is that she is the most important thing in your life, or that you would be nothing without her, or that you saved her, or that she saved you from X, Y, and Z, and all of these things that you hear men say when they're getting married, when they're giving their marriage speeches, and on and on. So it's this is very common in today's world, and like I said, it is a mistake. Now, what makes matters even worse and makes things even more confusing for young men, particularly the Gen Z men of today, is that despite everything I just said being the truth, you have women that will adamantly, furiously disagree with everything I just said. But the reality of our world and the reality of our species is that women will always mask their true intentions and desires from men. What women say they want can never supersede or override their biological, psychological, or physiological programming. What women wanted or desired 500 years ago is the identical carbon copy of what they desire today and what they will desire for 500 years in the future. So, what do women desire, and how should Gen Z men be acting, and how should a Gen Z man acquire a woman? Well, the first most important thing is that the Gen Z man should have this on the lowest tier of his priority lists in life, particularly if you're a younger guy. This is never something that you're going to really put too much time, effort, money, resources, or anything into acquiring. You will do some cold approaches here and there. You know how to talk to women. You know how to be a confident guy. You have things going on in your life. You have goals. You have pursuits. You're learning valuable skills and trades. You're reading lots of books. You're building your knowledge. You're always becoming a more and more valuable man. And you have many things going on that are much more important than any woman could ever be. And so this, brothers, is the truth that for most of human history on this planet, men have been the prize, believe it or not, that women chased after. I know that's going to blow your mind. But yes, before feminism, men are the ones that held the value, and men were the high value, classy, elegant, on and on that they used to be, that the men of today are not so much anymore. Feminism has destroyed not only young men's drive and purpose to be successful, or to better themselves or become a high-value man, but it has also completely disillusioned women into what their role should be in life, to be a happy woman. Because believe it or not, women are more depressed than they were during World War II, and it has a lot to do with them being completely disillusioned, them living these lives as fish when they're not even supposed to be in the water, so to speak. And of course, they've been told this since they were very young. They've been told this since they were in kindergarten. This programming is absolutely burnt, is absolutely branded into their subconscious mind, and every fiber of their being, every neuron of their consciousness is going to be locked forever in this way of thinking. And of course, you have many Gen Z men that have also been brainwashed, have also been conditioned, programmed, on and on about how they should view women. And it's very unfortunate what this has done. It's very unfortunate what this has done for male thinking when it comes to women, because you now have a situation where these Gen Z men have grown up their entire lives seeing these movies and reading these books about women being these action heroes or shooting men, and being these martial arts experts in action movies and just beating the crap out of dudes. And these dudes in the movies are these fools, they're these idiots, they're these weak, spineless, just useless beings. And so you end up with this very weird, very bizarre, and totally unique to our current times situation where men are incredibly intimidated by women. They are incredibly intimidated by women, and they have made women their primary focus in life. Of course, you have so many Gen Z guys out there today that are desperate, that are sexually frustrated, that are romantically frustrated, emotionally frustrated, on and on. So knowing all of this, as the Gen Z man listening to this video, you need to tell yourself that it is not all your fault. Brainwashing, indoctrination, or somebody trying to change your way of thinking is not always going to be very apparent or very obvious. Believe it or not, there are many ways in commercials that have nothing to do with women or dating or any of that. But there are techniques in ads that you will see nowadays that is also a common technique used in hypnosis. And that is that when the brain is trapped in an unsolvable riddle, it becomes very vulnerable to suggestion. What do I mean by this? This is why advertisements for big companies show bizarre and meaningless imagery, or bizarre and meaningless characters, creatures. I mean, it can be anything, but it's something that doesn't make sense, and something that the rational part of our brains subconsciously is desperately trying to solve and can't make any sense of. And when it can't solve this, it is backed into a corner and it's extremely open to suggestion. And what happens is they drop their slogan, they tell you to buy their product, they tell you to think a certain way, they tell you to vote for a certain somebody, and they have you, and without you even knowing what was going on. Because of course this happened subconsciously. You don't even feel it, but it is happening. So we live in a world of very intense and very constant brainwashing, conditioning, and mental training. And it is to get young men to think a certain way. And it is really hurting young men. It is really misguiding young men. So let's now go on to how you can combat this, what exactly you should be doing. So yes, like I touched on earlier, the way that you can combat this and what you should be doing, as opposed to chasing women, is you should just be focusing on bettering yourself. Self-improvement is going to be the main focus of your life. It's not necessarily going to be making money, because if you earn money in today's world, it all just gets stolen from you anyways, through taxes. So self-improvement is going to be huge. Not only do you want to better yourself as a man by learning trades and skills and reading books and on, but you also want to become a genuinely interesting person. This is something that Aaron Cleary talks about in his books, and he talks about how there are very few people in today's world, especially if we're talking about young people, that are actually genuinely interesting to talk to. And one of the best ways to become an interesting person is, yes, to read books and further your knowledge and become an expert on topics. Excuse me. But it is also to go through hardships in life and to develop a character, because, of course, the best way to develop your character as a man is to be metaphorically forged on the anvil, like red hot steel, and you have to get hit with the hammer with all that heat and pressure. And it's the same way for men if they want to become interesting and get a character. So I can definitely say for myself that the most interesting people that I talk to in my life, or that I've met in my life, are people who have gone through great hardship, and people who don't fit in, people who dress like what most people would consider to be clowns, people who stand out like a sore thumb, and continued anyway and have persevered through it, and they now have a very rich, a very robust, and a very unique character. Okay, this is as opposed to, somebody who was born into a rich family. They have the rich parents. The grandparents were millionaire farmers. And college was paid for. The car was paid for. They had women just throwing themselves at them because they have the last name. They have the wealthy last name. Those people, I can say, typically are not as interesting, because there was no real suffering. There was no going without help. There was no period in their lives when they had to form a character and had to really go through serious adversity. Now, of course, the world's not black and white. I'm not saying that all people who have had advantages are boring people, but as a general trend, that's how it tends to be. So don't view your hardships in life and your adversities and your genuine suffering, which is what the Gen Z men of today will have to go through. Use it to your advantage. Stay away from the alcohol and the drugs and the crutches and all of those things to get through, because that will prevent you from building a strong character, because you're essentially turning off your consciousness so that you don't have to deal with the problem and become better from it. Just go through your problems. You're going to have times in your life as a young man, as a Gen Z man, when you're very alone, when there's no one to help you through your problems and your suffering or your mental strife. And if you can get through by yourself, and you lift weights, and you have hobbies and passions and ways that you can deal with your suffering without other people's help, it's going to make you an interesting man. So do not see it as so much of a curse. Use it as a fuel. This is sublimation. This is transmutation. This is turning lead into gold. But of course, it's going to take great effort on your part. So with all of that under our belts, now that you know that, let's get into what I'm getting at with this metaphor of icing on the cake. Well, icing on the cake simply means that you, as a busy, hardworking, industrious, interesting, educated man with many things going on in his life, has what we would call cake. He has the fluffy chocolate fudge cake. Right? It's very good on its own. You don't need any other desserts. You don't need the cheesecake. You don't need anything else. You will be more than okay with this wonderful chocolate cake. However, this cake doesn't have any icing on it, right? And what is the icing? The icing is when a woman comes along in your life and gives you the wonderful female attention and the supporting female aspect, to your life. She's going to add what a woman can add to a man's life, which is, of course, always a nice thing. It's always a good thing. It's going to be very, very hard to find in today's world. Like I touched on earlier with feminism. Women are not interested in serving a man, and they're certainly not interested in being a man's partner or cooking for a man or being feminine or nurturing. They are definitely not interested in that. They are interested in being your competitor and in being better than men. But it can come along. But of course, if it doesn't come along and you don't marry one of these unicorns, you always have the cake. All right, and that is what this video is about. That's what's going to carry you through life. Okay, I know a lot of guys, and I've met a lot of guys. I've heard a lot of Gen Z men talk about this, where they get in a breakup and their entire life falls apart because they're left with a vacuum that they allowed this woman to completely fill up their essence as a man, okay? They had nothing left because they allowed this woman to be everything in their life, to be their absolute focus. And that, of course, drove the woman off, and now they are this empty shell. So Gen Z men have to be extremely cautious and extremely cognizant and aware to never lose the cake. All right, always have your cake. And like I said, the cake is the majority of what is going to satiate you in your reality and in your life, okay? Whereas a woman or chocolates or candies or road trips or all these other things are really just extras, okay? Because the essence of you as a man are your passions, your hobbies, your skills, your everything. I mean, there's so many angles and so many aspects and so many different paradigms that make up a male human being, right? That make up a man. So in the physical world and in three-dimensional reality and in our times here on Earth, that is what icing on the cake is referring to. But I want to use this video to help out Gen Z men as much as I can. Not only in this physical life, but let's talk about spirituality, okay? I am a practicing Christian. I always promote Jesus Christ, and I am absolutely an advocate for the Christian values and the Christian teachings. And so I'm going to tell you right off the bat that if you are at a point in your life when you're a high value, interesting man, and a woman comes along in your life, she wants to put icing on your cake, know that if she is not a Christian, if she is not a practicing Christian, if she does not embrace and practice traditional Christian values, the relationship is not going to work. Why is this? Because all good things in this world come from God. And if somebody is going against God or is defying God or doesn't even acknowledge God, how can it be good, right? If a relationship comes about with you and a secular woman and it's not of God, you are guaranteed that it is going to be of this world and therefore of Satan, and it is not going to go well. What I really mean to say is that it is not going to end well, it is not going to last, and most importantly, it is going to bring you down, okay? Secular relationships are pure poison, okay? Secular relationships will bring you down. They will degrade you. They are spiritually abrasive, and they are extremely expensive. Not only financially speaking, but to your person, to your character, to your essence, to everything that makes up a man. Okay. It is something that is going to be a poison. It is going to be a wound, okay? You should never get involved in cohabitation. You should never get a woman pregnant, without getting married in a church. I mean, it is impossible for that to go well. It never goes well. I was talking earlier about how there is a lot of brainwashing and conditioning and all of that going on when it comes to women and the dating market and the dating dynamics that Gen Z men were subject to. But Gen Z men were also very subject to the age of science and the age of NASA and space and evolution and all of the crap that we learn when we have to go through public education, which is controlled by the evil forces that be. The evil political party is what controls education, is what funds education, and they are who decide what these children, these innocent children, are going to be subjected to and brainwashed into believing when they go through K through 12 education. So one of the biggest lies that is meant to extinguish young people's faith and to plant seeds of doubt and to prevent people from being saved through Christianity is the theory of evolution. Of course, this theory of evolution argues that over many, many billions of years, through random mutation and no outside designing or intelligence or engineering, you had tadpoles that eventually turned into humans. And that is an incredibly dramatic and extreme statement to propose, but even more so to believe. And it takes an incredibly huge amount of faith for me to believe that personally. And I just never bought it. I was never able to believe it. So I want to read you young guys here I want to read you something from Holy Orthodox Father Spiridon Bailey, what he has to say about this lie of evolution that was meant to destroy young people's faith. So let's see what he has to say here. He says, there are many high-level astronomers, physicists, and leaders in other scientific fields that recognize their work as pointing to a confirmation of Christian beliefs. In his book, The Lucky Planet, David Waltham writes that Earth was blessed with incredible good fortune, giving it all the right properties to sustain a complex and beautiful biosphere. It may be the luckiest planet in the visible universe. In fact, the Earth's capacity to sustain life relies on many factors. The mainstream media frequently celebrates NASA's discovery of new exoplanets, planets orbiting stars other than our Sun, as fresh evidence for the inevitability of the discovery of life beyond Earth. But for NASA scientists, the existence of a planet is far from proof of the likelihood of life. We only have to look at our own solar system to see how inhospitable other planets can be. The first and most important detail that NASA scientists believe will indicate the possibility of life is liquid water. The Earth's surface is 70% water, at places reaching a depth of 11,000 meters. Water is considered essential for life because of its many different qualities. For example, liquid water is a universal solvent which enables nutrients essential for life to be carried around the world, making it also an ideal medium for chemical reactions. Water not only transports different molecules to places where reactions may occur, but also does so while maintaining their integrity. Its very transparency is something we might take for granted, but without it light could not penetrate to the organisms within the ocean's depths. The sea creatures would be blind. Water expands when it freezes, which is why our pipes get split in the winter. But this expansion reduces its density, and so it floats. This results in ice floating to the surface of the oceans rather than the body of water freezing and killing anything living within it. This also acts to insulate the body of water and so prevent further loss of heat. The ice were denser if ice were denser than liquid water, it would sink to the bottom of the ocean and never melt. Water at the surface is important in helping to regulate our planet's capacity to absorb or reflect sunlight, which regulates the global climate. Water absorbs heat and circulates it around the Earth, acting as a giant thermostat that regulates the temperatures of our seasons. Without this, we would experience extremes of temperature that make life difficult, if not impossible. But the presence of liquid water is far from being the only factor necessary for life. There is a relatively thin band within which a planet must orbit its star if life is to exist. If the planet is either side of this band, then it will become too close or too far away. It is affectionately known as the Goldilocks zone, because orbiting outside the zone will make a planet either too hot or too cold for life. Within the zone, things are just right. Venus, for example, is roughly the same size as Earth. But being closer to the Sun, its atmosphere is much hotter and consists primarily of carbon dioxide. The technical term is the Circumstellar Habitable Zone, CHZ, and is defined as the band around a star where liquid water can exist continually on the surface of a planet for billions of years. In the 1970s, observers recognized that the increasing luminosity of the Sun means that the CHZ, or Circumstellar Habitable Zone, is slowly moving further away from it, meaning the Earth will eventually no longer be habitable. This is a reminder that even when our conditions are right, there is a window of opportunity when life must make its appearance. We shall consider the role of time below. The location of a planet is not only important with reference to its star, but also its position within its galaxy. Astronomers refer to the Galactic Habitable Zone, or GHZ, which relates to factors such as the availability of the materials necessary to make certain types of planets and the presence of materials that can wipe out life. Further from the center of the galaxy, there are less stars formed because the density of gases is lower. It is stars that provide most of the heavy elements in the galaxy, which means that the further out we go, the decrease in metallicity. Here we are speaking from the viewpoint of someone who believes in galactic chemical evolution, something alien to the Genesis account of the creation of the universe. But in order to satisfy their arguments, I am demonstrating that even from within their paradigm, life in the galaxy is at least very rare. According to this thinking, the required amount of basic elements to make Earth weren't available in the Milky Way for a number of billions of years, and only then in its inner regions. The second factor determining where life can survive in the galaxy is where it can survive long enough to become technological. Again, using the evolutionary paradigm, life on any planet can be extinguished by impacts from large asteroids or comets, and also by radiation events. We are positioned where there are relatively fewer pieces of rock and ice likely to hit us, but also far enough away from the galaxy's center where high-energy electromagnetic and particle radiation are emitted from the active galactic nucleus. We now recognize that the existence of all large gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn are also essential for our survival. Jupiter's gravity has removed most of the dangerous bodies from the asteroid belt that were hurtling through our region of space. Jupiter and Saturn have protected the inner solar system from too many impacts. But simply having such large neighbors in our solar system in itself is not enough. Many factors in Jupiter's formation could have prevented it from being any help to us. If it had formed a little earlier or a little later, had been larger or smaller, or had followed a different orbit, it could have failed to have absorbed the dangers to our existence. Asteroids have been important since it is thought by those who do not accept the Genesis account that they played a role in bringing water to the planet. But if their number was not controlled, they would have extinguished life here. Once more, we recognize a very specific set of requirements that are met by Earth to make it habitable. Other features of Earth make it special too. The seasons only exist because our planet's vertical axis is at a tilt of 23.5 degrees. This means that we have a variation in the temperature at any one place, without which there would be a reduction in how much of the Earth could be used for any kind of agriculture, since some places would be continually too hot or cold. The size of the tilt is also important because if it were doubled, then so too would be the temperature changes, making much of our land too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. Once again, the Earth is just right. Our orbit is also important. Not all bodies around our sun have such a regular movement. Earth's orbit is circular, but much of the solar system we inhabit appears quite chaotic. Thankfully, the larger planets are the least chaotic, but Mars, Mercury, and Venus are surprisingly irregular in their movements. This is because the larger planets are affected mainly by the gravity of the Sun, while the smaller bodies are influenced more by the gravity of the larger planets than are their big brothers. If the planet rotates around a larger star than our Sun, our star is smaller than many others. The annual orbit would take much more time and so affect the capacity for crops to grow and be harvested within a specific single cycle. This would also affect the duration of seasons, extending the warmer and colder periods. The duration of the day affects this too. If our days and nights were longer, the temperature differences between them would be much larger. An Earth-sized planet is very unlikely to follow a regular orbit if it is nearer the center of the galaxy, where its path will be affected by many sources of gravity. Though we have found other planets, so far they appear to have extremely eccentric orbits, making them unsuitable places for life to survive. The number of galaxies in the universe is huge, but as we learn about them, we are discovering how inhospitable to life most are. Ours is in the highest 2% in luminosity, meaning it is one of the most metal-rich galaxies that exist anywhere in the universe. The Milky Way is also positioned in a perfect location where, relevant to other galaxies, there are few other galaxies crowding us, which is vital for life. Other clusters of galaxies, such as Virgo and Coma, contain many more galaxies, which leads to something astronomers will call galaxy harassment, when smaller galaxies can lose much of their gas to larger neighbors as they drift too close. Earth's atmosphere is crucial for life to exist, not just because of its mixture of oxygen and nitrogen, but because it shields us from the billions of small meteors that strike the Earth every day. Our atmosphere doesn't just burn up meteors, but protects us from the ultraviolet rays coming from the sun, which would otherwise harm us. As Guillermo Gonzalez and Jay Richards say, our atmosphere strikes a nearly perfect balance, transmitting most of the radiation that is useful for life while blocking most of the lethal energy. Within the Earth is a molten iron core, which turns and so creates an electromagnetic field that also protects us from the sun's emissions. Without it, we would not be alive. This core retains its liquid state partly because of the Earth's crust is made up of tectonic plates that enable its movement. If the Earth had any other kind of surface, it would not maintain a liquid iron core, and its atmosphere would be stripped away. The magnetic field would decay after just a few hundred years, but the Earth regenerates its field. Its structure acts like a vast dynamo that relies on a fast enough rotation to produce eddies in the outer core. The magnetic field that protects us requires tectonic plates that enable the interior of the Earth to turn. One reason Earth is believed to have this feature is because of the continuous presence of liquid water on its surface. It may be remarkable to modern readers who have grown up with this understanding of our planet that it was only in the 1960s that scientists were able to conclude that tectonics and continental drift is a reality. This is an example of a huge paradigm shift in scientific thinking, as the old geosynclinal theory was discarded. Earth is believed to be the only planet in the solar system that has tectonic plates. Venus, for example, has a thick crust that cannot move. It is not just the size of our neighboring planets that is vital for life, but the size of the Earth must be also within a narrow range for life to exist. If a planet is much smaller than Earth, its galaxies will be weaker, which would result in it losing its atmosphere too quickly. And the larger surface-to-area volume ratio would create a cooler interior that wouldn't permit a sufficient magnetic field. It has also been observed that smaller planets are more likely to have chaotic orbits, as described above. If the planet is much larger than Earth, however, the greater gravity would not permit the development of tall mountains and deep oceans. In fact, many scientists suspect that the planet would be covered by the oceans if the planet became too large. It is important to remember that gravity increases much more quickly in proportion to planet size. If the Earth was just twice its actual size, the gravity would be 3.5 times greater because its mass would be 14 times greater. A planet must once again be just right. When we look at the night sky and see the extraordinary number of stars, it is easy to imagine life on the planets that orbit them. But despite Sagan's contempt for our star, he considered it very average. Our sun may be very rare. It is true that there are stars larger and smaller than our own, but contemporary science has begun to recognize some of the special qualities of the sun. When astronomers talk about the stars, the two basic properties they consider are its luminosity and its mass. While the sun is in the mid-range, in reality only 9% of all stars in the Milky Way are as massive. Most are what are called dwarf stars, M-dwarfs. In fact, over 80% of stars in the Milky Way are low-mass red dwarfs, which are unlikely to even have habitable zones. Only approximately 4% of all stars in our galaxy are what are called G-type, main sequence stars like the Sun. In addition, the Sun is an extremely stable star, which means its output of energy only varies by 0.1% every 11 years, the period of a sunspot cycle. The Sun turns out to have a much smaller variation than most other stars, without which we would not have the stable climate we enjoy on Earth. Astronomers have also been able to calculate the amount of metals contained in the Sun and have observed that it is far richer in metals than other main sequence stars of a similar age. This is vital for the formation of planets, since Earth is, for example, made almost entirely of metals. The Sun follows in orbit around the disk of our galaxy, and again we find that it is far more circular than that of other stars of a similar age. This is important because if our solar system were to cross the spiral arms as others do, the vast molecular clouds, there would reduce the likelihood of life surviving. It is not only the stars we see in the night sky, but also our moon. If we compare the rotation periods and angle of axis of Earth and Mars, we find them to be similar, but without the steadying influence of a large moon like the one Earth has. The tilt of Mars's axis wobbles. Astronomers have calculated that the tilt Mars has varies from 15 to 40 degrees over a period of 10 million years. Such changes prevent a stable climate and the growth of vegetation. In comparison, the Earth's axis has moved no more than 2.5 degrees, which not only ensures mild differences in our seasons, but also protects the solar ice caps. The moon's mass also creates sufficient gravity to produce ocean tides. If the moon were much bigger, however, its gravity would have slowed the Earth's rotation, which would result in a bigger difference between the temperatures of our nights and days. The moon is so crucial to life on Earth that Gonzalez and Richards went as far as saying, the relationship between Earth and moon is so intimate that it's probably best not to think of Earth as a lone planet, but as the habitable member of the Earth-Moon system. This partnership not only makes our existence possible, but also provides us with scientific knowledge we might otherwise lack. When we begin to study the stars and the nature of the universe, we inevitably start to wonder at the nature of time. Astronomers use numbers to describe the age and distances from Earth that are so huge that the human mind is really incapable of grasping or imagining their reality. But even within such vast periods of time, there are specific periods when life is possible. This has become known as the Cosmic Habitable Age, or CHA. Because just as there are only certain planets that are habitable, so too the conditions for life do not occur throughout all time. If we speak once more to the paradigm from which scientists work, believers in the Big Bang see the condition of the universe just after it came into existence, as having no stars and consisting of dense hot plasma and elementary particles. At this stage, the heavy elements required to form human bodies had not yet been synthesized. The accepted understanding within astronomy is that it took a few 100 million years before stars came into being and began to eject life-essential elements. The size of the Milky Way means it has collected heavy elements more quickly than other less massive galaxies. But this is not a process that will continue to make the universe more habitable, since the decline in long-lived radioscopes, which are necessary for geology, means there will be less habitable planets coming into being. We should note that the old pagan idea that time is cyclical was supported by the belief that the expansion of the universe may be slowing down, and that eventually it will begin to retract under the force of gravity. Scientists once argued that a continuous cycle of Big Bangs, expansions, and contractions might be the nature of reality. However, new observations have confirmed that rather than slowing down, the expansion of the universe is accelerating. I mention this because it confirms a biblical sense of linear time, one that has a true beginning. It was Aristotle that argued that the universe is eternal, not Christians. These are just a few examples from the very long list of requirements that make life on Earth possible according to the materialistic understanding of the universe. One of the main arguments employed to show that there must be life beyond Earth is the vast number of stars and presumably planets that exist, but this number becomes very small when divided by the factors necessary for life. Astrobiologists know this to be the case, but the insistence that the Earth cannot be the only place where life is found is not so much a mathematical or scientific issue. It is a philosophical matter. If alien life can be found, then God, as the creator of life, can be forgotten, and with him the moral framework that Christianity brings. SETI and its efforts to hear signals from other planets are the product of atheism. This is not to suggest that Sagan and others are trying to deceive us, that they are not part of the deception of our title, but they are using the scientific paradigm of our age to try and justify their rejection of Christ. Okay, so that is the gist of that chapter. And for me personally, after reading that, I feel a bit shocked, because I think for many young people who grew up in the age of science and learning evolution in schools, we always had that little bit of doubt about Christian truths or faith in God. We always had that little bit of doubt because of science. But after hearing everything there about the planets and how meticulously everything was set up and designed and engineered, it is impossible that all of that happened just by chance. So I tell the young Gen Z men that, who are hopefully listening to this video, I tell them that to strengthen their faith, because faith is not only something that should be at the center of dating and women and your dating life. It's something that should be at the center of your life and at the center of every decision that you make in your life. So when we're talking about the concept of icing on cake, there should be this cake that you have, which is your spirituality, is your salvation, is your Christian path. And the Christian path is a narrow and difficult path, as you know. It's full of a lot of hard work. You cannot be prideful. You cannot judge others. You cannot envy others. It's very, very hard. But if you are a practicing Christian and you find a woman who's also a practicing Christian, you're going to be free of a lot of the poisons and toxins and cancers that are going to be in secular relationships. Now, what are these poisons that I'm talking about? Well, just to name a few: bitterness, resentment, hate, paranoia, obsession, jealousy, self-righteous delusion, vainglory, self-deception, and diabolic delusion are what you can expect in secular relationships. And that is why all secular relationships do not last. That is why all secular people in secular relationships are going to suffer terribly, and the relationship is going to end terribly and very painfully. So from this video, I want you to take this concept of icing on cake, not only for your physical time in this world, but for your spirit. Your spirit is something you're always trying to cultivate and grow in this life, just like your character, right? But your spirit is going to last forever, and your body here on this earth is not going to last very long at all. I mean, life flies by. So you may die, and you may lose your life, and you may think everything is over, but it's not, because you have the cake. And the cake is your faith in Jesus Christ, and is your salvation, is your Christian walk. That is your cake. And icing on the cake is neither here nor there. You know, as a practicing Christian, you don't really need it. So think about container ships. This is something that I was thinking about the other day. I love metaphors, and if you think about a container ship, some of those ships go through really intense storms. I mean, you see those videos on YouTube of those storms of those ships going through these huge waves. I mean, these massive swells, and sometimes some of those containers will fall off. And I thought that is so congruent, and that is so that really parallels men and their dating life and their pursuit of women. You know, life can be really hard enough as it is, and the last thing that you need are these containers when you're sailing through a storm. Okay, you know, these containers can be things of the secular world. It can be ego, it can be pride, it can be sins, it can be sinful behavior. It can be junk food, it can be pornography, it can be chasing women, it can be chasing sex. All of these things weigh a man down, just like those containers weigh down a ship. So why be the overloaded container ship when it's not necessary? You know, I'm telling you, those containers don't need to be there. You know, Satan will have you believe that you got to carry around all that weight on your shoulders, that you have to carry around these containers, but you don't have to. You can be a unloaded ship, you can be a lightweight ship, and you can sail through these storms of life, which are unavoidable. I mean, every single human being on planet Earth is going to suffer. But suffering is important for our salvation. We have to suffer. But we don't have to have those containers of sin, of sinful behavior, sinful addictions. All of those things don't need to be there. So think about that metaphor, and I think it's going to really help you. I hope this video helped any Gen Z men or any young men in general that happen to come across this video. Share this video with anyone whom you think it might help. I thank you for listening to me. If you've made it till the end of the video, God bless you, and God bless your families, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.